Hi, this is Koiro with a new video for you. It's been a long time since the last one. I think it's almost 20 days or something. And the releases in the future couple of months, it's going to be about the same because it's a lot of traveling at work and you have the Easter holiday coming up soon too. And I have not forgotten any projects. I do have received the clock chip for the Euro PC, we will look into that. And I do have got some chips now for the MSX2 Omega build. But before I'm going to continue with that build, this is a sidetracked project that I also mentioned in an earlier video. I'm going to do a firmware upgrade on my Retro Chip Tester Pro so that I can get accurate tests of some of the ICs that I'm not totally comfortable with. And lots of the chips that I've ordered recently are fakes and remarked, so I do have to do a throughout check of some of the TTL chips, and I rather trust the Retro Chip Tester Pro than the 866 Mini Pro Programmer. So that's what I will be looking into in this episode, and there also is going to be some tips about programs and some things I learned along the way. I bought the Retro Chip Tester Pro with the chip already fitted and with all the fuses and the firmware burned into to the main chip. And I do have an Arduino or two that I was thinking of using for this, but somehow I couldn't get it to work. And then I discovered that one of my Arduinos had some bad I/O pins, and this was the pins that was meant to be used for programming devices like this. So the choice was about buying another Arduino, that I do anyway. And I also ordered this standalone programmer that can program bare bone chips if need be, so that I can make my own Arduino based designs. And what I have bought is the Waveshare Atmel 80 AVRISP XPII, and this is an in-circuit programmer for the Atmel AVR chips. And I'm going to use this to upgrade the BIOS on my Retro Chip Tester Pro. I just got this in the mail, so I haven't opened it yet. Nice Chinese letters, but they also have some writing here in English. Probably download for the programs that I need. A normal USB cable and the device itself. And this probably hooks right into these connectors, otherwise you do have... Okay, so this is not meant to be changeable from this side. That is very strange if this is not a spare cable. Maybe it is. It looks to be the same pin orientation. That's very strange. And I also have some other leads here, but this looks like it's meant to plug into this side here. And this is if you have another kind of connector. But I have to look into that, and on the other side of this you only have the USB connector. Yeah, and you have the pin out here. Pin 1, MESO, and 3 SCK, 5 reset, 2 VCC, 4 MUSI, and 6 GND. The target board should be powered from external power supply. And I do think when I looked into other parts of this, it actually states that the board should be powered only through the programmer, and that you should remove this power supply board. But I have to check up on that, because if I leave it plugged and it goes 5 volt, and the 5 volt is about the same, it does not matter much. But this is the plug that should be connecting to this, and I'm not really sure how this is, but probably it just plugs into that and you are good to go. So I will have to do some digging in the documentation to find out. But first I think I'm going to connect this one and install the software for it. So I'm just going to enter the waveshare.com and waveshare.net websites to see what they have to offer. Yeah, we are just going to browse into the you can try the waveshare.net page first. It's not the fastest page, or at least not from Norway. Okay. It comes up with a Chinese heading at least. Okay. I do think I will enter the .com instead. Yeah, that was actually a bit easier to read. And let's see what we have here. MCU ARM, debuggers, programmers, or programming adapters. We can try this. Okay. And this is AVRISP XPII AVR. This is the one that we have, but this is to buy the device. Supports AVR Studio 4.5.6 or higher version, delivered with firmware for AVR Studio 5. Can be updated to support other AVR Studio versions. Okay, that we probably need to take into account. Support. Okay. At this stage I started to be a bit worried because I do know that this device should be 100% compatible with AVR or now MikroTik's own device, but what I didn't realize at this point is that this actually is firmware compatible with the original microchip device, so that you will program it with Microchip's firmware when you upgrade Microchip Studio. But I did not realize this yet, so I just downloaded the Microchip Studio and took it from there. I browse around a bit to see if I can download older version. After all, it said that this firmware was compatible with version 5. But in the end I decided just to download AVR Studio, or as it's now called, Microchip Studio 7, to see if it is supported or if the firmware will get upgraded. After browsing around a bit on the Waveshare webpage, I found this wiki page where they have listings for all their devices, and well, it's not much stated on the USB AVR ISP XP2 device. There are some information, and there are some information also about firmware updates. Firmware upgrade manually. Normally, if you update AVR Studio, you need to update the firmware of programmer as well, and generally the upgrade of firmware following the software. Yeah, we have Studio 7 that we have downloaded now. Okay, so you're just using standard Microchip programs to do this. So this is just a straightforward copy of the tool from the AVR. So we probably should be good to go. We just run the installer and install the software. Yeah, the first part is quite easy. I just click on the EULA that I can actually install the software, and I use the default file path, and I also just install the AVR kind of tools. I will not be doing the other installs. Yeah, I accept everything to run in free mode with a workstation license or as a network. And of course, we have no license to anything. This compiler, I don't really need it to do what we are doing now, but I'm installing it anyway, so if we have to do something in the future, we do have it. And really, I'm trying to install a new PC in my environment, so this computer will be delegated to side duties in the future, so I probably never will use this compiler on this computer. This is quite an old version of Visual Studio that's installing, 2015, version 15 of the build tools. Now installing drivers. I wonder if the driver for this device is installed at the same time, or it will take that when I actually plug it in. Yeah, you can be glad that I'm playing this in really fast forward, so you don't need to know how long time this takes. It doesn't take that long time, and this is quite a fast computer, but the installment processes, when you have a lot of stuff on a computer, it slows things down because they need to do all kind of version checks and so on. I do wonder if it needs a restart. No, it's only stating that you should launch Microchip Studio. And boy, does this look different from the last time I saw it, at least the startup screen. I think the last time I saw this one was when I was doing some Arduino stuff some years back. Yeah, I will try to plug this into USB and see what happens. It's in. It did find a unit. It's, yeah, it does look to be connected. Yeah, but now we have installed the Microchip Studio, so now we take it from there to do the upgrade of the firmware of the Retro Chip Tester Pro, and we are going to browse through the manual for that before we do anything else. There is a short chapter in the manual for how to just both program the device in the first place and then do firmware upgrading. And it is stated that you do need a 6-pin ISP programmer, and the programmer we have bought is 100% compatible with the Atmel AVR revision 2, and so that should be good enough. And there is some batch files made for this, but the program used for the actually programming and communicating with the device is a program called the AVR. There are some parameters within the file that should be set, and of course this is command line, so you can do this on the command line without this batch file. And here you just state what programmer you had, and they also say that the P is not required. I did try that first, but it didn't work, and I did try with various COM ports. We will get back to that later. And it's also stated here that the tester is usually supplied with voltage by the programmer for programming. Most programmers have a dip switch or a jumper for this, but our programmer has especially stated that the plus 5 volt is actually just a sensor input that senses if there is 5 volt on the circuit, and it does not supply any voltage to the circuit. So some of this warning does not comply with what we have read here, but we just have to try what's best. I don't think we can damage anything, at least not since the 5 volt is a sense input on our programmer anyway. And it also says that the SD card module shares line with the ISP port. The SD card module must not be plugged in during programming. And since we have not mounted our SD card yet, that should not be a problem for us. And this is the first time programming with the fusers, and you can see that they run this with the AVR program from the command line. And here they state what we are going to do, but this is still the fuses by batch file. They also have some available YouTube videos, but I don't think they is that good. I watched the English one, and even though I got some pointers from there, I couldn't finish the process by looking at this video. Yeah, and just some special hints on special programmers. And this is also possible to set when you do the programming, is if you use the full swing crystal oscillator or you use the low voltage swing. And I don't think it's any reason for us to change the settings on this. Yeah, and here just stated what fuses to set if you do this by another program. Yeah, but here it comes to the actually part about the firmware, and it's the same as we have described before. It's just different parameters, and there are some fault messages here, but This is for another programmer. And what we are going to do is we are going to use this flash firmware please edit bat file and make our own version of that and just change the parameters as need be. There is also an interactive file, winflash.bat, where you actually answer the questions each time, and you have this menu where you make the choices. But I think it's better to use this so we can actually go back and see what we did last time when we upgrade new firmware. And of course, when you set the firmware, it's not necessary to set the fuses again. And as I got my programmer finished with all the fuses and the first firmware revision inside, it's nothing I do have to think about. So that's what we are going to do, and I have downloaded the firmware. And this is the files that is in the downloadable batch from the maker of this project. And you have the WinFlash bat, and you have the AVRISP XPII file and the config file. And this is my version of the file. I call this Bati bat, and this is the original flash firmware file. And you also have a README file, and it states the same that we saw earlier. So now it's just about getting the in-circuit programmer working, and all the things we need and the drivers and stuff should be supplied in our microchip office install. So just cross the fingers and see if we can make contact with the device. And this is where I hit into some problems. Normally when we do USB things, and it's programmers and stuff, and all the documentation I found about the AVRISP tool, they advised me to install a driver that actually communicated by the serial port. And I tried to download several old drivers, and yeah, I wasn't able to succeed on this. But then I got the tips about a program called Zadig, and that's the same name as a friend of mine. But this tool is able to swap the drivers, and as this originally was installed with the Universal Serial Bus of our ISP MK2, I was not able to make it work with AVRISP at all. And then I tried installing it with the COM and LPT driver, the AVRISP MK2 COM3. I actually tried to swap it on other COM ports too, but I was not able to make it work. And I didn't find any good info about baud rates and stuff to configure the COM port, so I was trying, I think, everything in there, and I was not able to make it work. But then I changed to the lib USB K USB drivers, and I did what was stated in the manual all the time. I just changed took away the P parameter for port, and it worked straight away. So with the lib USK USB drivers and omitting the P parameter, it was able to communicate with the port at once. So that's a learning experience for another time, but at least I now have a very good tool if I need to swap some drivers on some USB units, because this has always been a hassle and a lot of fussing about in inf files and tweaking and renaming files to get this to work. So this is a very good, very easy tool, and I've tried it on 3 computers now, and it works every time. Link to this tool is in the description below, I hope, if I remember. Sometimes I forgot. Yeah, we will just try to give you a quick peek into what Zadig really is. And if you can't find your device in this list, you have to use the option list all devices. Then it lists all the USB devices on the system, and you just choose your one. And then you can just see what driver is installed, and you see what driver you have to choose amongst to install. And you just hit replace driver. And by some magic, this takes some time, and when this is finished, the new drivers are installed. You don't even need a reboot of the system. And I have yet to receive anything other than driver installed successfully. It's always a successful install, at least on my computers. And we can take a peek in the help section. We have the about here, and you can see who is doing this. Zadig, the automatic driver installer, version 2.8, and it's copyrighted by Pete Bottard and Akio. And there also is some links in here. And they have done a really good job on this program. I really love it. Yes, so now we are ready to upgrade the ShipTester Pro. Just have to get rid of what's in here, and I also need to power this up, as our programmer doesn't supply voltage to the tester, but that means that I probably can leave all the other modules in without no power draw. And I will just connect this to 7 volts as I usually do and check that it powers up. If I lower these, the automatic light control of the camera will show you that there is some display on this, so everything here should be good to go. Just unplug this, and we have our programmer here. And if you see on the back side, VCC is pin 2, and that means that this should be connected this way. And we are ready for the next step, that is loading the firmware into the device. Yeah, and we have our command line here, and this has to be run as an administrator. And I have unpacked every file on this. And I also have our bat file. Let's see how that looks. Okay. It was just a very short file, and we have here that the AVR dude is run with the AVR ISP MK2 and UFlash and stuff, so the P parameter is missing here, and we are running this with the AVR parameter, and the chip is a PAT Mega 2560. We have not been touching that. And it will search here for any firmware that starts with version 0. something hex, and we have the 0.24 hex file here. So it's just to run the BATI file. Type it right, like so. Error command file, connection status, target not detected. And of course I forgot to power up this device, and then you can also see that this switched to green. Yeah, that once happens. We run it again, and now it's starting to write, and it's writing 10% as of now, and it probably does a verify afterwards. We have to wait and see. And here up you can see that it's actually V target 4.8 volt. So this is measuring 4.8 volt on this sense input of the voltage, and that's probably due to some voltage drop, and it can be some inaccuracy on this. We are feeding this with a 7.8 volt into the regulator board. Yeah, and now it's doing a verify. And here is verifying the flash memory against the hex file. I can try to dim down this so you can read the display. It's actually not doing anything on the display when this is happening, so it's not blanking the display, it just stops the execution of where it was when we entered the firmware upgrade mode. Yes, AVR dude done, thank you. So that means that the firmware update process is finished. We will disconnect this, and I will disconnect this one as it will not be needed. And then we have to check the Retro ShipTester Pro. I'm not sure which menu it is, but we will find out eventually. I will just continue with the low light in the room so that we will be able to read the display in some kind of fashion. I just reset, and here it states B52, but there probably is some about function here or something. Service, self-test, enter config, info. Yeah, and here it states V24 Beta 4 as the firmware version. So I do think we are done here. I'm going to find something to test. Yeah, I can test this one. This is a HC273B, and if I go here to select, better to reset, logic, and logic test 74. So this will be it, and then we take it the other way around. 273, 8 times latch, 20 pin device, okay, ship OK. So the device seems to work, and that's a good start. So we consider this a success. We will use this now to test the other chips that we need to test to confirm the functions of the chips we are using in our Omega MSX2 computer. Yeah, when it comes to the Chip Tester Pro, this one, I have actually postponed a lot of things when it comes to this. Among other things, the firmware, but I also have these relays here that I just mimicked in place. This is much larger relay than what's meant to be here, so I just made some props to solder them in on the small space that was for that. And I had them laying around for, yeah, I got them probably a week or so after this was finished, but since it's been working, I have not done anything to it. And the same with the firmware. It has been working, but I see now more and more chips and other stuff that requires firmware upgrade. So the next thing I will be doing with this is to fit SD card, but just as now I couldn't find my SD card readers that I ordered for this. So that will be a new project for another time. As of now, it's working as it should with new firmware, and I'm going to use this now to test all the chips in addition to the TL866 before we place them on the MSX2 Omega board. And I will continue the Omega project probably in 2 weeks or something. I do have a lot of travel coming up, so I will not be able to do as much on the hobby scene as I would like to. And I also have some other upcoming videos that I'm working on as part-time and doing information gathering and so on. So thanks for watching. Hope to see you again in my next episode. And please hit like and subscribe if you want to be notified when we post new videos. So, thanks for watching.